beginning of my video. Boom!
Welcome back to Boring Reviews.
Boring land.
Oh, just kidding.
Blasphemer!
Hello,
right.
Boring Review Nation!
Kind of pointless.
We know all things. It was over in a snap.
We really want it. Alright, we'll be nice.
Only you can be a Patreon.
Oh my gosh!
You don't need to follow the show to be hyped.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Boring Reviews. The party animal Nick here.
Gabe, what's going on, people?
And we are ready to review another movie for you. This is a Malayalam film. This is also a Patreon request from Ashik. Let me know how to say it correctly, but we appreciate your patronage. We appreciate you supporting Boring Reviews. And you know what? We have gotten a few new recent patrons, and I just want to throw out their names and thank them for becoming patrons. We got Abhilash, Dipankar, and Amila. Thank you so much for being new patrons. Thank you so much for supporting Boring Reviews. The videos you requested will be coming shortly. Thanks to all of our patrons and supporting us during this crazy time. If you want to become a patron, check out the link below. So we are going to be reviewing this film, which I knew I wasn't going to be able to say correctly when I first saw it, but we'll try. Ayyappanum Koshiyum. Now, I'm going to say Koshiyum because the character's name in the movie is Koshi. So this is a film, like I said, was a Patreon request. This film came out just this year, so very recent. Like I said, it's a Malayalam film. And this is a film that was directed by a person named Sachi, a man named Sachi, which is short. He's got much longer last name. Is also written by Sachi. But this is a film that we did a reaction to not too long ago on the channel, and it got a lot of support. It got a lot of love, and so I said, we got the Patreon request. Let's get to this right away. So me and Gabe are ready to react to this video right now. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and just sit back and listen to some of our thoughts. We appreciate you being here. So this is a film that is about two men, basically. And I've noticed in the 4 Malayalam films that I've watched so far, Unda and Kumbalangi Nights, this film, and then Jallikattu, I have noticed that these films that I've seen, at least, they focus on 1 or 2 plot points, just a few things. And they allow the entire film to materialize around that plot. And so this film, in my opinion, is no different. We have a very basic plot. You have a wealthy guy who used to be in the military, who's now retired. He put in his 20 years, it seems like, who's got some influence. And you got this sub-inspector of a police force. And you have these two guys clashing because the civilian, we'll call him, he was arrested for having alcohol bottles in his car. Now, they weren't open. He wasn't drinking them, but just to have them was illegal in this town, in this city. And so he was, very belligerent. He had woken up. He fell down. He didn't like that. This movie's all about pride, too. That's the main theme, is pride. And so they take him in, and he's, okay, whatever. He knows that he has some influence, and he knows in his mind, I'm going to make these guys pay. And he doesn't shy away from the fact that he can do that. And then some of the police officers get nervous. This guy's going to, have these big, powerful people come after us for arresting him. And then the sub-inspector is doing everything by the book. He calls his boss to say, yeah, we got to book him, but, try to tread lightly, whatever. And he does, but pride gets in the way. And basically, you have a clash of these two main guys in this movie throughout the entire movie. They're trying to one-up each other. They're trying to scare and antagonize one another. And that's what the whole movie's about. And it's a very basic premise. And, there's so much we can talk about. I'm going to let you get started, but that is, in a nutshell, what the synopsis is.
So, right off the bat, I got to say, I had a little trouble with this film, okay? I realized, like you mentioned, that it's a character-driven piece. So it being a character-driven piece, it really focuses on the two stories or whatnot. And usually when you have that character driven piece, those stories are more grounded down to earth, so to speak. And a lot of the things here are obviously there's some social commentary about how power and influence, leads to injustice, and how even though you have the police officers who are all, authority figures, this guy doesn't respect them because, he's taught at home from his father not to respect them because this guy's, ex-military, plus they're maybe, I'm not sure if they're a different caste system, but they definitely are a lot more affluent, have a lot more money. So
they're living fat, that's for sure.
So those things are cool. But then there's a couple scenes where both, and I'm gonna butcher the name too, Ayyappanum and Koshi, okay, both these guys are like superheroes at one point. When they're trying to arrest them, it took like 10 cops to take them down. Listen, first and foremost, I don't care what country you're at, cops are trained, bro. And I know he was in the military, but still, it wouldn't have taken that many cops to take one guy down. So let's be real about that. Right now, we got another issue in this country with police brutality, and you can see what just 2 cops can do. You know what I mean? Let alone 10. So I was like, okay. And there were a couple things that a couple times in the movie that kind of took me out of the story because they made these guys both seem, I get it, they got military training. One's, had an unblemished record. We're talking about the police officer, Koshi, right? He's had
the police officer is Nair.
Nair.
He's the ex-military guy.
Right. So Nair. So, and they even give you some backstory about why Koshi is such a feared dude and a respected dude in the town or whatever. I get all that, but he's not a superhero. And
you mean Nair, right? Nair,
yeah, but he's not a superhero. I keep saying Koshi. He's not a superhero. And some of those things, like if you're gonna give me a story that's grounded in reality, okay, kind of like Marriage Story was, Uncut Gems is, then you've got to be realistic with it. You know what I mean? You can't have both elements in there. That was the first thing. Second thing is, I think some of the character building moments, a film like this, for instance, is considered slow. Okay, this is one of the very first Indian films I can say I literally was like, I felt the time. Okay, some people might say it's a slow burn, but I felt the time. Like, man, this thing, the first hour and change, like nothing happens. This is just all character building, and I get that, but with character building, you have to be able to really understand the dialogue. Just reading it in and of itself sometimes isn't enough. And I'll give you a really good example. Some people did not like Joker, even though I said right away, as soon as I saw it, hey, Joker is a masterpiece. This thing is going to win, tons of awards. And obviously, Joaquin Phoenix won the Oscar. But some of the best moments of Joker, when you really think about it, it was a slow movie as well. There was really 3 quote unquote gory scenes or action scenes, but everything else is character building in that film as well. And the best line delivered was when he's sitting there with his psychiatrist and she's like, tell me, Arthur, how's your job? Are you doing okay? Are you having any negative thoughts? And he said, I come here day after day and you ask me the same thing. You don't really listen, do you? All I have are negative thoughts. And the way he delivered that line was so chilling. You wouldn't get that just reading the subtitle. You know what I'm saying? So for me, I think that with these films, because specifically this film, there's a lot of character building and we don't speak the language. Sometimes just reading it in of itself doesn't do it. You got to get the voice inflections and the emotion that goes into that. With that being said, I just did not get this film, honestly. I get it, old versus young, money versus power. I got all the social commentary, but why it's beloved the way it is, it went over my head. You know what I mean? Like, Snowpiercer. I know people love Snowpiercer. I was mentioning it to you. I saw Snowpiercer, and I know it's from the same director of Parasite, which Parasite just won all these awards, but I didn't get Snowpiercer. You know what I mean? It was okay. It was a great film, but I wasn't, lauded as a masterpiece. There were some cool parts, like the one line that I read and it was still cool was when the inspector, this dude, again, they make him out to be a legend, right? So they got the one dude in the town who's like waiting for him to retire. He said, I can't wait till you retire, because when you retire, when you take off that uniform, is what he says. You're gonna get yours, so I'm gonna handle you. And he said, bro, I take off this uniform every night. Like that was, that was cool, right? But I'm sure there were so many more lines like that should have hit that way that I just did not get. But I guess the story was fine, making the social commentary between power, and money and corruption. We saw a lot of that, and it was funny at one point. Nair says, "I'm gonna go to his house or whatnot." Because his father is, no, his home is where he learned this behavior. So we want his father, his family to also, and his, you know what I mean, to understand what's going on over here. Because what happens, and I was counting on a Nick a quick review, but what happens is this guy ends up getting drunk, and then he films Nair like pouring liquor into a cup and then pouring water into it, and he ends up getting him fired. He films it on his phone while he's doing it.
No, it's a huge deal because of the whole alcohol thing, and
right.
He's not supposed to be serving him that. He's not supposed to be opening it up. It's already been sealed and it's been marked as far as evidence, so to speak. And I don't think he's drunk yet, but he's got an alcohol problem. He's an alcoholic. And he even says later on in the film, he's like, I have these anger spells if I don't have alcohol in me. And I know it's a problem I have, but I get these headaches and I get these kind of pain if I don't have alcohol. And so, yeah, sure enough, he had his phone right in front of him. And I'm like, how are you going, if it's that big of a deal, how are you going to let him have his phone while you're pouring that in the first place? But, it just lapse judgment or whatever, but he records him doing it, sends it off to the news agency, and it creates this whole crap storm. And, you said he loses his job. The lady, the deputy who comes in just to brings the bottle to him, she loses her job temporarily. And it was a huge deal. But there's a lot of things in this thing that's a huge deal. I don't want to get too much into, but that definitely was a huge part of the movie because it shifted and it caused one of our main leads, Nair, to lose his job. And this is one of the things that I really liked about this movie. And it's funny because you learn about this about, 45 minutes, an hour in. And I watched this movie over 2 nights. I started out really, really late one night. And because it is a slower film, I realized I had to start the next day. So I was starting to doze off halfway through, went to sleep, woke up the next day, finished it. And I was just going to finish it where I left off. And I thought, I think I was dozing off like the last 10 minutes. So I rewound it 10 minutes. And I'm so glad I did because I would have missed that short conversation where you find out that there was some incident when Nair was younger where some of his people, his tribe, or the people in the community, whatever it was, they were wronged. And so he goes to the people that wronged them and he killed like 20 of them or 12 of them or something like that. And when you hear about the story, you find out at the end that the person that got that revenge was Nair. And once he decided to put on the uniform, he decided to live by the honor and the code of that uniform with those khakis and to not indulge himself in those kind of revenge tactics ever again. And he was the model cop for like 25, 27 years, no issues whatsoever. And so once he was stripped of that, it was almost like a superhero going into his alter ego where now he is freed of that honor and that code, and he's going to go and make things right because now he's got a wife, he's got a kid. People think his wife is a Moes and that she's dangerous or whatever, and Coast uses it against him. I mean, there's so many layers to this film, but I really liked that addition about 40, 45 minutes in, and it's the police chief who's warning Koshi. Maybe he's a little afraid of influence or whatever. Maybe he doesn't trust Nair because there's not the uniform to protect him. But he warns him a few times in the movie, like, you got to be careful what you're doing because this is the guy you're messing with. And now that he doesn't have the uniform, nothing's going to stop him. So I thought that was an awesome part and a great little piece in the story.
Right. No, and I mean, there were some really interesting concepts there. And like I said, for me, some of the best parts of this film are like, for instance, when you said Koshi realizes he has a problem and he tries to make things right. Okay. He goes and he's trying to go and admit what he did. He's going to get into alcohol counseling. But then again, here goes the pride because at the same time when he's doing this to try to get Nair back his job or whatnot, because he's wronged them, right? Nair's over at his house threatening his wife and kids and his father. So I mean, if these guys would have just taken a breath, and I think that's part of the commentary there. They would have taken a breath and sat back, then they would have been like, okay, let me relax. Things would have played out differently, but they were just kept trying to one up each other. Like you said, they're just, you know, the cat and mouse game. You do something to me, I'm going to do something to you. I'm going to do something to you, you know, and really the situation became so much worse than it needed to be. Going back to,
well, let me start off with some of my thoughts. So we've heard a lot of your thoughts. Let me share with some of my thoughts about this movie before we go into deeper. So I enjoy this movie a lot more than Gabe did. And I don't say that to try to one-up him or this or that. I mean, that's just my honest opinion. I was a little confused about the first 15, 20 minutes. Like, what is this movie about? Because I remember I saw the trailer, but the trailer doesn't give you a whole lot. And so I was trying to figure out what's going on when he's getting arrested and the bottles and the whatnot, because we don't have any places here in America where, you know, just having a closed bottle is banned. You can't have open bottles, obviously, but we don't have any of those alcohol bans. And so trying to figure things out, I really got into this film when Koshi's in the police station and you hear him, you know, he's got a lot of pride. And like we said many times, that's what the whole movie's about. It's about pride and not knowing how to control that pride, not knowing when to not give in to reacting to that pride. But he's just sitting there and he's just shooting out a few things, trying to let them know that, okay, you guys can do what you want. That's fine. I don't need this. I don't need that. But I will, once I get my phone back, I will be calling someone. And then they start going through his phone and they realize he's got this person's number and this person's name and this Hollywood star, this Bollywood star and all this kind of stuff. And this guy knows a few people. And then even Nair's getting a little nervous about it because, you know, he doesn't want anything to come down on him or whatever. And when it started going to that cat and mouse thing, that's when I started to really get intrigued. And then, you know, when he was messing around with the videotape and the alcohol, I was like cheering. I was like, yeah, this guy's awesome. And I was cheering for Koshi. And Nair seemed like subdued. He seemed a little passive, you know, this guy or whatever. And I'm thinking like all these people seem to be afraid of Koshi in more than one way. Like, there's like 10 police officers. What are they so afraid of? And then once Nair strips himself of that honor and that coat and that uniform, and he just turns into psychopath mode, I started cheering for him a little bit because, man, this guy's really got something to lose. This guy has, you know, he's just in a different zone, like schizophrenia. He just goes into that place and you're not going to snap him out of it. And so I don't think reason would have worked with him. I think Koshi did try a little bit, but the measures weren't great enough. Once this guy was pushed to that zone and he's like, okay, this is what you're going to do. Now I'm going to finish it. That's where the pride gets out of hand. I think that's the whole point of this movie is, first of all, you don't mess with someone that you don't know who they are in the first place because you have no idea what they're going to be able to do. Don't judge a book by its cover. Also, you know, let's just stop and let's think for a second. You know, Koshi's got his dad and the way he raised him, and he's got those issues trying to prove himself. This guy retired from the military, and his dad still clowning him like, oh, you think you're big now that you retired from the military and you can live off your pension or whatever. Like, the dude served his country for how long he did. But you have all of these pride issues, and they're just outdoing each other step by step. That for me, I was really intrigued and really interested in the great lengths these people went to. Some of the fighting was not up to par that we're used to. You know, there was a lot of kicks. There was a lot of full hand slaps or whatever, which we don't see that kind of fight in the movies that we see here in the States. So that was a little different. The Nair guy was definitely like a superhero. He was invincible. I mean, at the last fight, and we'll get to that in a second, but this guy was getting hit left and right by Koshi and not even phased. Koshi would get hit once, and then he would get phased and do the whole wrestling act or whatever. But I thought, like, okay, they're really going out of their way to make Nair seem like this invincible, unmovable force, and I didn't really like that too much. But I loved a lot of the different instances. When he blows up the car with a little gunpowder line, he just stands right in front of him, and he just drops it. When he shows up, and all those guys got hired by Koshi's dad to mess with them. And he goes in there and he can't get to the gate. So he climbs on top of the car and over the wall, and he just beats all these guys and keeps throwing them over the ledge. Like, that part to me was pretty cool. I liked a lot of this movie. I can see where you're coming from in a lot of other parts. It's definitely a slower burn, and it's definitely different than any movie I've seen before. But the whole cat and mouse aspect really, really intrigued me.
And, you know, I respect that. Again, I just think that for the action we did get, and there were some really cool scenes. To me, one of the coolest scenes were when after, of course, he's been threatened all this time, he's been subdued. And I think that's another commentary they make where the job, the badge, so to speak, you know, kept the demons at bay, so to speak. And I think for a lot of us, that's true, where our employment, our titles keep us from doing things where sometimes, hey, somebody might just cut you off in traffic or say the wrong thing, but I'm gonna be cool because I've got something to lose. Where if you got nothing to lose, that's a really dangerous person. You know what I mean? And we behave differently because we have something to lose, you know. But once he lost that, he went to his enemy's house, the guy who said, you know, I can't wait till you take off that uniform. And bro, he takes a bulldozer to it and destroys it. First, he beats the bricks off of the dude, okay? I enjoyed that fight, actually, even though I'm like, okay, this is like, I don't know, the choreography just did not pull it off, okay? Here's the thing. Everybody respected.
But maybe that made it a little more real. Maybe that made it a little more less John Woo. And I'm not saying looking for John Woo type action, but maybe it made it more, you know, we are there. We are in our native land. We are on the ground. I see a tractor over there. I'm going to come after you with that. I'm going to use my hand. I'm going to use everything I can. Maybe that was a point to where this is like an action film, almost quasi superhero film with how invincible he was. But it's not that thing. It's just, you know, we're going to use the resources that we have. Maybe that was the point. I don't know.
No, true. And I mean, realistically speaking, that's what a street fight looks like. It's a lot. It's not as choreographed as, you know, television. As it's not going to be a Rocky Hansen kind of thing. You know what I mean? Street fights are really sloppy, really ugly. You know, you use whatever's there. And for the most part, they don't last 30 minutes, which is another one of my complaints. The last fight scene was so long. These guys
Very long.
Exhausted. Take it from somebody who's been in the ring, okay? 3 minutes seems like a lifetime. In boxing, you fight anywhere from, you start with amateurs, which is 3, then you go to 6, then you go to 8, then in the pros, you do 10, 12. 3-minute rounds it's a lifetime. Mind you, you get a minute in break in between. Going straight, oh my gosh. Have you ever seen a UFC fight? Those 5-minute rounds, they feel like forever. In a street fight, that's not gonna, fights don't last that long. So I'm like, this fight was really, really, really drawn out. Which again, it just didn't go with the tone. I guess that's the thing I'm trying to say. Where if you're gonna make it realistic and a more grounded film, like Parasite was, for instance, great. Make a realistic, grounded film. Have that social commentary in there, but then you got to have the same tone where you can't have these guys being superheroes, being invincible. Come on, that just doesn't happen. But you know, for me, I think you might have been able to sell it too if Nair's character was more imposing. And I say that where maybe he doesn't have to be physically imposing, but he has to feel dangerous. What if Nair's character was played by like a Nawaz Siddiqui, somebody who carries that you know, oh man, everybody is intimidated by this guy. He knows how to play that. Were you at all intimidated by Nair's character at all during the film?
Again, not to be contrary, but I really liked his character. I liked his performance. He had that like look on his face where he was just, I mean, you can call this guy names, you can say your mama jokes, whatever you want, and this guy has that same look on his face as he's riding with his helmet and his little motorcycle. And I thought that was kind of interesting that he didn't look imposing with the helmet and the motorcycle. But when he gets off of that and he starts doing his actions, then it's like, okay, this guy is imposing. I don't want to mess with him. Again, judge that book by its cover. He's an older gentleman, but he still is that same person he was 27 years ago when he had revenge for his people against whoever those people are that attacked them. He's still that same person. He's kept that at bay, kind of like the Hulk and Bruce Banner. That's what I kept thinking about when I was watching this, that he allowed the Hulk to come out. He had that incident first in 27 years. And it was hard to get him out of that zone. You know, case in point, that 30-minute fight at the end, he's just going and going and going. And then eventually it takes all these people to strip him off. And you know this being a fight before. When you get that adrenaline coming, you're not trying to kill the person. You're not trying to maim them, but you're trying to win the fight. And someone can't just tell you, oh, Gabe, please stop. Like, you're in that zone. You need someone to physically pull you off so you can take a few breaths, you can calm down, and you can kind of see what you're doing. And then, you know, that was the end of that fight. It was a long fight. It definitely was. I will say I liked, like you had mentioned this when we were talking about this before we recorded, I liked the part where they're both on the motorcycle and they're trying to send each other an olive branch, but each person can't take too much of it. He's sitting on the back of his bike, and it's not a big bike, and he's holding him for security, and the guy's like, "Don't touch me." Like and he's messing with them, obviously. He's not trying to be nice, but he's having him ride there, and the guy's like, "No, I'll just walk the 1,000,000 miles," which is a long way. There's so many different things where like you're just sitting there like, oh my gosh, this is going on and on. These people cannot just calm down. There's one point where Koshi does try to fix it. He goes and tries to get the guy's job back, and he goes through that whole process. But then that's when the guy shows up at his house, and he's like, okay, now I can't forgive him. That's where the writing was very, very awesome, in my opinion, because they did those things where they were trying to humanize them and trying to show where they would calm down. And then the next person went the next step without knowing that's what they were doing. They just assumed the worst. They assumed they were going to come after him. Koshi goes after his house and destroys the entire thing. His dad gets the wife arrested. And there's a rule that, if the baby still needs to be breastfed, then the baby goes to jail with the mom. And so it's a whole bunch of messed up stuff's going on. What I do want to mention real quick is you probably noticed this a bunch of times where he was twisting the end of his mustache, right? He would do that every so often. And he did it about 8 or 9 or 10 times throughout the movie. And I'm sitting there like, okay, what is that about? Because usually in the old movies, the villain like, ho, 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 I've got you now. It wasn't that type of a thing. I feel like, and this is just my opinion, maybe you can give your opinion, maybe even think about it. But I was thinking, what is the director, what is the storyteller trying to tell us by every time he does that? And I feel like when he had his back against the wall and he felt like he had no way out, and then he got an idea and he got a little more confidence where he's constantly trying to put himself in the lead position. Both these guys are. I feel like once he had not just an idea always, but just he felt like, okay, now I'm going to get back at him. Then he started doing that. It seemed like a comfort, like almost like a tail in a poker game, when he seemed like he had some confidence and he knew what he was to do next in this chess match. Then he started doing this. Did you have any thoughts about why he kept doing that? Did you think it was just like a nervous twitch? What are your thoughts about the mustache touching?
No, I thought it was the same thing like you mentioned. It's a tell, you know what I mean? Whenever he was doing that, he was just basically exuding that confidence, letting you know that, oh, he feels like I got this, whatever his plan is going to be. I went up this person, etc. Yeah, I mean, dude, one of the things I did want to talk about was the cinematography. This was filmed so gritty, you know what I mean? Almost guerrilla style, where I don't know if it was like, obviously it wasn't like 1917 where it's one shot, but the director, some of the shots, you could tell, he was right up on the characters. Like it wasn't filmed in a poorer area, obviously. So that's where our main area is, right? Koshi's, he's affluent. His father's affluent. You can see the difference between where Koshi's house is, and even at the end where we see the police station where Koshi's at, compared to the police station in the house where Nair's at. But it was just, I don't know. It felt real. Again, that's why the tones to me are off, because it felt so realistic. At times, it almost felt like it was a documentary being filmed. You know what I mean? The way some of the shots were. But then we have these guys are pretty much both superheroes because 10 cops can't take down Koshi. And, Nair's indestructible. And this old man's taking a beating from a younger dude who was in the military, and it doesn't faze him. So that's why I was like, the tones are off. But I really did like that gritty guerrilla style, realistic tone to it. Sometimes with all the CGI in some of these movies, it looks so fake that you're like, man, can I get a practical effect, a practical shot? You know what I mean?
Yeah, sometimes too much CGI is definitely off-putting. What's interesting is you talk about social commentary. We mentioned a little bit, but this has a big social commentary on alcohol, right? If you take away his alcohol problem, where he has to have that by him at all times, even when his brothers or his dad's men bring him that bag of the clothes and whatnot, there's a bottle of Jack Daniels or something in there. He's got to have that all the time. If you take away his alcohol problem, he never gets arrested. He never gets in trouble. This movie does not happen whatsoever. So if you think about it, you take that one thing away. It's interesting in movies where if you can take one element away, would it change the entire thing? In this case, it definitely would. He wouldn't have had those bottles in there. They would have the police were ready to go for the night. They even called in like, are we good now? We've done our quota. Can we leave? It's late. Oh, yeah, you can leave. And then this car comes and they find the 8 or 12 bottles in there. I think that's interesting. I think the other thing about this movie, in my opinion, is there's no true villain in this film.
No.
There's no true hero in this film either. Both of them do some shisty stuff. Both of them do some heroic stuff. Both of them, in my opinion, you can root for and you can get behind. And that is a very hard thing to do for a filmmaker. Like you said, the cinematography, the filmmaking itself was very cool. You felt like you were right in that town. You felt like that town didn't, I mean, obviously it's not how it was, but it seemed like that town had no notice. Guerrilla style, we're just going to come in, we're just going to film. And, people aren't going to care. They're going to go about their daily business. So that was really cool. You got a lot of culture in that. Even if, like us, we don't fully understand the culture, you got that. The acting was, for the most part, very, very good, very superb. I really liked the actress that played Nair's wife. I thought she was on point every scene that she was in, and she wasn't in too many scenes. I liked even how some of the police were very loyal to Nair, and they were willing to, break the rules and stretch the rules to help out their guy. I like how he said in that one moment, because there's a few times where he's right face to face with Koshi, he's not going after him, and you think, okay, maybe he's a coward, maybe he doesn't really fight. And he tells him at one point, I would come after you right now, but you're under police protection. And if I went after you, then they would have to come after me, and then I would have to mess with my own boys. I'm not willing to do that, so I'm going to leave. So this guy still has honor to a certain degree, but he has a mission in his mind to come after this guy. There's a lot of layers to this film, which I understand. It's not the most enjoyable film, entertaining film I've watched from start to finish. Like I said, I had to stop halfway through because it was late at night and I was falling asleep. But there's a lot to this film, a lot of substance to this film, and I feel like that is what a lot of Malayalam films, that they're not flashy. They're not, explosions here and there. They're not, and I was just thinking, I saw another Malayalam film I didn't mention either. What was that? The pandemic one. Anyways, so there's a virus. That's another one. They're not like these Michael Bay films. I know you don't like Michael Bay films, so you're not asking for that. They're very grounded in reality. This one definitely took some liberties with some unrealistic aspects of the fight or whatever. But overall, I very much enjoy this movie. I'm grateful for the request. I like this a whole lot more than Unda, which is probably my lowest scored review so far. I'm ready to give it a grade. I'm going to go ahead and give this film a B plus. And the reason why I was going to give it a B or even a B minus, I really wasn't. I had told you that previously. But as we're talking about it, as we're peeling away these layers, quite honestly, I'm thinking there's a whole lot more to this film than I thought. And your point about the cinematography, I didn't even think about that. There's a lot more of this film besides just the entertainment value. And it was still entertaining enough. It was still intriguing enough. So that's why I gave it a B plus.
I can respect that. Again, I think with you with some of the discussion we've had right now, you've sold me a little bit. I was getting ready to give it a C minus. Really, I was like, wow, I just don't get this film. Even though I enjoyed the cinematography and I enjoyed some of the character build, I didn't enjoy Koshi's acting. I just did not get how Nair was playing that part. To me, he just wasn't this. I know that the backstory and the character building told us that we were supposed to be like, wow, this guy was a superhero, this guy was a legend, but he didn't sell it. His role didn't sell it to me. So, for that reason, I cannot give it a grade higher than a solid C. But, you made some great points. And again, not all films are for everyone. I do feel like the same thing happened to me with Parasite. I saw Parasite and I saw it twice, but there were certain things there where I had to see it a second time because I was like, okay, yeah, this movie was great, but wow, it swept the Oscars. Like, what am I missing here? And I think it's just that language barrier. Like, if you don't get the actual inflection when the actors are saying things, I guarantee you that line where, even though we thought it was cool, but when he said, I take his uniform off every day, would have been so much cooler if we spoke the language. You know what I mean? It was like, oh, wow, it would have hit so much harder. So I think that's, for me, where I disconnected from the film, but I give it a C, a solid C. And I see your points, and not my favorite film, definitely, but it's definitely not a Michael Bay film. It's not Transformers Last Night. Oh gosh. You know what?
You started on that nonsense.
I started twitching when I mentioned that movie, bro.
Oh, I hate that movie. So the last thing I want to mention is I did not love the ending. I feel like I understood what the director was going, that once they're out of that zone and once they can make amends, they can go forward and move on. He's got the uniform back on. He asked for the transfer to where Koshi's family's at or whatever, and he's there and he shakes his hand and introduces himself. I just felt like for the journey we went on, that was like the humanity route. I wanted to get some kind of closure on their whole dispute. Maybe a conversation like, hey, I appreciate you helping me get my job back or something. But maybe with their pride, they couldn't do that. And the handshake was enough. It just wasn't my favorite ending. But the rest of the film was, for the most part, very enjoyable. We hope you enjoyed our review. We hope that you do not start booing Gabe as you're watching this with his lower score. As always, we're going to give you our honest opinion about these movies. We're never going to pander. And we hope that you enjoy enough to give us a thumbs up and to check out some other videos. And if you want to, then stick around. YouTube more than likely give you that next video. And until next time.
We know all things.